Hi, GPP tribe. Today I am going to continue with why I left Christianity. And today I want to talk about one of the big reasons for why I left Christianity, and that is religious trauma. And welcome to my channel. For those who don't know, my name is Ivory, and this channel provides guidance on mental and spiritual wellness for the non religious. We're going to deconstruct our old religious beliefs together and talk about the new practices that we're discovering along our spiritual journey. We'll talk about healing emotional wounds, healing from religious trauma, manifesting our goals, finding and fulfilling your purpose, and overcoming limiting beliefs that keep us stuck and hold us back. All right, so on with the topic. So, in my last video, I talked about how I stopped going to church. At the time, I was still practicing Christianity, but I felt a need to pull away from the church. And um, so, what was going on at the time um, was that I I'd had several experiences with religious trauma. And one of those experiences was when I first, um, I, okay, I left, I stopped going to church when I was about maybe 15 or 16. And at the time, I started studying with the Nation of Gods and Earth, so the 5% Nation. And so from around the age of 15 or 16 up until my mid 20s, I was about somewhere between 23 and 25. Um, that's when I came back to Christianity and rededicated my life to Christ. And at that time, I started attending a church, and I got involved in a romantic relationship with one of the members at the church. And, on the outside, he seemed really legit. Um, he was on the praise and worship team, he was a minister in training, he was involved in a lot of activities at the church. Um, and he just seemed like a really, spiritual person who really loved God. But when we would spend time together, it was a different story. I experienced a lot of mental and emotional abuse. It was, he would use Bible scriptures to try to control and manipulate me. Um, it was just, uh, yeah, it was just a really bad situation. And, um, and the way the relationship started was he approached me and he said that God told him that um, we were supposed to get married, that we were supposed to be together. And being this person who was newly dedicated to Christ and just wanting to serve God, I was really naive, and I just accepted what he was saying, that um, this was God's will for us to be together. I just took him at his word. And so, like I said, when we got into the relationship, it was just a totally different story. And so after dating him for a while, I had just had enough. And, I, came to the realization, yeah, this is definitely not this is not a relationship that God would want me to be involved in. Like, I shouldn't be getting hurt like this if it was God's will. So I ended the relationship. But after being in that relationship for so long, I had some trauma. And, it was really hard for me to continue attending that church where he was also a member, because he was still like, try to speak to me and try to talk to me. And I really, didn't want to be around him after, going through that, because it was still fresh for me. And, I needed to recover from that trauma. And so I stopped attending the church and started going to another church. Well, that didn't sit well with the pastor and his wife at the former church. They, their position was, it was God's will for me to be at their church. And so they were telling me that leaving that church, I was getting out of God's will by leaving that church. And the thing about it, the way that they taught at that church, they portrayed God as very judgmental and very vengeful. They would talk about, you always need to stay in God's will. Um, you know, the safest place to be is in God's will, and if you get out of God's will, you know, bad things will happen to you. You won't receive blessings from God. Um, and it was just this very, it, it was almost like they portrayed God as very tyrannical. And so, and the other thing about the way they taught was that they believed that um, before you make a decision, that God needs to speak to you and tell you that it's the right decision. And so, and they would say that part of God speaking to you, that it would also need to be confirmed by him as a pastor. Like, if it was God's will for you to do something, that God would also tell him as a pastor that it was God's will for you to do whatever it was. So, say for instance, you want to go to college. Well, you need to pray and ask God if it's his will for you to go to college. And then you need to seek confirmation from the pastor that it's God's will for you to go to college. So it was that type of teaching. And then, and like I said, the thing was, you you want to be careful and not get out of God's will because you'll be punished. And so with that type of teaching, um I was very afraid of making decisions, because I didn't want to get out of God's will. And so it was very confusing when I was trying to make decisions about my life, and it just made, sometimes I was almost like, paralyzed or like stuck because I didn't know whether to pursue this thing or whether I needed to wait because I didn't want to get out of God's will. And I didn't hear God speaking to me. I wasn't getting that confirmation. So when I left the church, I had this, I carried that fear of getting out of God's will and being punished by God. And so I felt like being that I had gotten into that relationship and it wasn't God's will, I thought that God was punishing me for disobeying him. And I I just I just had this constant fear of God's judgment and God's wrath. And it really affected my life. Um, and so that was another form of religious trauma that I experienced. Um, and I carried that around for a number of years, where I was just in this state of despair and hopelessness because I felt like I was being punished by God, and just this fear of God. And um, another form of religious trauma for me came from the way I grew up. Um, my mother was very domineering, very controlling. And um, so I grew up in this very strict Christian household. And she wanted to control every aspect of our lives. She told us, she would tell us what to wear. She wanted to control how we wore our hair. We had to get her permission before we went to the beautician. She would make a lot of the decisions about um, what hairstyles we were able to wear. Um, we even we lived in an apartment complex, and there were boys that lived in the neighborhood in the apartment complex, and she wouldn't even let us go outside because there were boys that lived in our apartment complex. So it was this very um, domineering, this um, helicopter mom type, just hovering over us. And so, um, and her justification for this type of behavior was that the Bible says that children are supposed to obey their parents, and that, spare the rod, spoil the child. And so this is how we were raised. And that was also traumatic for me. I had issues with standing up for myself and being assertive. Um, and then the other thing was just not being able to um, express anger a in a healthy way. Just because I internalized the anger because I wasn't allowed to speak up or voice or express myself, in my mother's household. So I suppressed a lot. So with these different experiences, I um, I carried a lot of trauma, And so it got to a point where um, these things started to weigh on me. I guess I reached my breaking point from just the weight of all these things, and I felt like I just needed um, a break from church, and just to really spend time um, healing. And so I chose to stay home, and I would do Bible study and prayer at home rather than going to church. I would visit a church here and there, but for the most part, I just developed a private practice. And as I began to do that, things began to change for me. Um, the way that um, I would pray, um, it began to be this inward thing where it wasn't verbal, it wasn't vocal, it was more of an internal dialogue. Um, and when I began to do that, I noticed that um, the things that I needed and the things that I desired, um, they started to manifest immediately. And this was, as far as the way you're taught about prayer, you pray for things and then you receive them. This was the first time in my life where I actually started to see the things that I wanted or needed manifest in that way, where I actually focus my attention, on what I desired, and then to see it answered in terms of um, a divine intelligence responding to what I asked. Just being able to see that um, in that way. And as I started to develop this inward practice, um, I would intuitively start to do things um, that I didn't realize at the time, but I was actually meditating and practicing mindfulness, but I didn't have a name for it. I just intuitively started to do these things. And it wasn't until later on um, I learned, oh, okay, this is meditation. Oh, okay, this is mindfulness. And as I started to practice meditation and mindfulness, um, I began to heal, and I was able to let go of the emotional um, the emotional burdens um, that were um, causing the trauma. And I was able to release those things. And I I learned a lot through that experience. Now, after going through that and healing, I can look back on um, my experiences, and I can I'm thankful um, even though what I went through, it was it was hard. Like it didn't feel good emotionally to go through that pain. But now that I've overcome it and I'm on the other side of it, looking back, I um I look at, I believe that we all come here for a purpose, and all of the things that we experience within our life, they're meant to teach us something. And so the experiences that I went through were my teacher. And through that, I have learned more about myself. I've gained wisdom from those experiences. And I'm a stronger person because of that. And so I don't, I'm able to, I don't have that, those negative emotions when I look at, when I look back at what I've been through, because I've released those things. And so, you know, I am where I am, even right now doing this video. I'm here because of what I went through. Um, I wouldn't be making this video if I had not experienced those things. And so I'm grateful for that. So thank you for being a part of my journey. Um, Thank you for just allowing me to share my experiences with you. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey. Even though I'm not able to see you as I'm making this video, um, there's still that energetic connection there. So if you've enjoyed this video, please like and share. And if you are not if you haven't subscribed to the channel, then please subscribe so that you can get notifications when new videos come out. And you may be someone that is struggling from religious trauma, or maybe you have some emotional wounds that you've been carrying, or you may need guidance with making decisions when it comes to your purpose. Um, or you may be facing some other mental or emotional challenges. And I would like to invite you to work with me. I offer one-on-one coaching. And if you're interested in working with me, then reach out to me at kemeticcoaching@gmail.com to schedule an appointment. And thank you for watching. Peace, love, and light.